We all know McDonald's a beacon of comfort, open day and night. But after midnight, the familiar glow turns eerie. The laughter fades, replaced by silence and shadows. The golden arches become a lonely outpost, where the rules of the day no longer apply. For the night shift crew, it's a different world, one of isolation, strange noises, and unsettling moments. These employees are the keepers of the empty lobby, attuned to every creak and flicker. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the midnight shift, where comfort food meets creeping dread. Welcome to the stories that haunt the golden arches after dark. The night shift at McDonald's is a world apart, empty, silent, and isolating. The building, built for crowds, becomes a cavernous shell. Every creak and flicker feels amplified, every shadow suspicious. Young employees, unprepared for the psychological toll, find their minds playing tricks on them. The line between reality and imagination blurs in the dead of night. These are real stories from those who faced the darkness alone. What happens when you're the only one awake at McDonald's after midnight? I was 18, working the overnight shift at a small McDonald's on the edge of town. Most nights were uneventful until he appeared. At 2:15 a.m., a man in a red windbreaker and baseball cap would silently stand at the drive-through window, staring in. He never spoke, never ordered, just watched, motionless. His presence was unnatural, his stare chilling. After a minute, he'd turn and vanish into the darkness, leaving the lot empty. I tried to rationalize it, but he kept coming back, night after night. My quiet job was about to become a waking nightmare. His visits became a ritual. Every night at 2:14 a.m., he appeared in the same spot. We joked about it, but the dread was real. Our manager, Kevin, checked the security footage for answers. But every night, during his appearance, the cameras glitched, static frozen frames or distorted blurs. The system showed nothing and the techs found no faults. It felt like we were being watched by something that didn't want to be seen. The fear grew. This was no ordinary late-night visitor. The golden arches had a secret, and it was watching us. Then, the man vanished for a few nights. Relief was short-lived. One night, the drive-through speaker crackled to life. No car, no order, just static and heavy breathing. A whisper, "I see you." Frozen with fear, I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside. The lot was empty until I spotted a crouched figure behind the dumpsters. My light caught him, the man in the red windbreaker. He tilted his head in a jerky, unnatural motion, then sprinted into the trees with inhuman speed. I locked every door, heart pounding. The night shift was never the same. Some stories stay with you long after the sun comes up. I was 21 and juggling college classes during the day with night shifts at a McDonald's to make ends meet. It was located in a quiet, sleepy suburb, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen. The job was perfect for my schedule. After 10 p.m., I usually worked the drive-through by myself. The stillness of the late hours didn't bother me. In fact, I welcomed it. It gave me time to study between the occasional late-night customer or just get lost in my music, with one earbud in and the other listening for the telltale ding of a car. That simple, predictable routine was my anchor. It kept me grounded until the night the routine shattered, and I started hearing a familiar voice through my own headset. It happened on a quiet Sunday, creeping close to midnight. I was sweeping the floor near the drive-through window, the rhythmic scrape of the broom being the only sound in the empty restaurant. Suddenly, my headset crackled to life, a burst of static that made me flinch. A woman's voice, calm and strangely firm, cut through the noise. Number 7. No pickles. I didn't hear a car pull up, which was unusual, so I turned to check the camera monitor mounted above the register. The screen showed nothing, just the empty, dimly lit drive-through lane. No car. No glowing headlights. No person standing at the speaker. Confused, I spoke into the microphone, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet space. Please pull forward to the first window." But there was no reply. No car came. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I walked over to the glass window and peered out into the darkness, searching for any sign of a customer who might have walked off. The parking lot was a sea of silent, empty asphalt. There was nobody at the speaker box, nobody walking away. I tried to rationalize it, to push the weirdness away. It must have been radio interference, I told myself. Maybe a stray signal from a trucker's CB radio, or another drive-through nearby. It was a flimsy explanation, but it was all I had. I shook my head, took a deep breath, and forced myself to go back to my cleaning, trying to forget the disembodied voice and its oddly specific order. The very next night, it happened again. Same time, same unsettling calm. The headset crackled, and the same voice echoed in my ear. Number 7. No pickles. The tone was identical, a perfect replay of the night before. This time, I froze completely, the broom handle clutched tightly in my hands. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I hadn't imagined it. My eyes darted to the security camera feed just in time to see the screen flicker. For a split second, there was a strange pulse of light at the speaker, like a camera flash in the dark, and then it was gone. The lane remained empty. My hand trembled as I radioed my manager, telling him the speaker was acting up. He checked the system from his office and said something that made my blood run cold. The order was real. It had been logged in the system, but when I asked where it came from, he just brushed it off as another tech error. I tried to tell my coworker Becca about the voice in the headset. She was my friend, and I thought if anyone would believe me, it would be her. But she just laughed it off, teasing me about being overtired and letting the spooky quiet of the night shift get to me. She didn't take it seriously at all, that is, until the following weekend, when she worked the early morning shift, the one that bridges the gap between the dead of night and the dawn. She was leaving for the day through the back employee entrance around 6 a.m. She pushed the door open, stepped into the cool morning air, and then stumbled back inside moments later, her face pale, looking like she had just seen a ghost. Her own ghost. She told me, her voice shaking, that there had been someone in the drive-through lane. Not in a car, just standing there, staring directly at the pickup window. The figure had the same build as her. The same color hair pulled back in the same messy ponytail she always wore for work. It was, for all intents and purposes, her exact double, standing silently in the empty lane. Becca said she stared for what felt like a lifetime, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Then she blinked, just once. A single, reflexive action, and when her eyes opened again, the figure was gone. Vanished without a trace. She didn't laugh at my story anymore after that. A few days later, the experience seeped into my subconscious. I had a dream that was so vivid, so terrifyingly real, that I woke up with my heart pounding against my ribs. In the dream, I was at work, wearing my headset, trapped in an endless night shift. The drive-through speaker kept clicking on, and a distorted, sorrowful voice repeated the same phrase over and over again. "You forgot me, you forgot me, you forgot me." In the dream, I tried desperately to pull the headset off, to silence the accusing whisper, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like it had melted into my skin, becoming a part of me. I woke up in a cold sweat, the static from the dream still buzzing in my ears. That night, I came dangerously close to calling out sick. The memory of the dream was too fresh, the feeling of dread too heavy, but I didn't want to seem paranoid or unreliable, so I forced myself to go in. I told myself it was just stress, my mind creating monsters out of exhaustion. I tried to keep myself busy, cleaning and stocking with a frantic energy. But as the clock ticked past midnight, a familiar sense of foreboding settled over me. And then it came. The crackle in my headset. The same calm, firm voice. Number 7. No pickles. This time, I didn't answer. I didn't look at the camera. I just stood perfectly still, hoping that if I ignored it, it would go away. But then, on the order screen, the words appeared, and the pickup timer began its relentless countdown. Someone, or something, was waiting. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely stand upright. The order was on the screen, a digital ghost demanding to be served. The timer was ticking down, each second a tiny hammer blow against my sanity. It was no longer just a voice in my ear. It was a demand, an expectation. Something was out there, in the dark, and it wanted its food. I felt a strange, horrifying pull, an obligation to complete the transaction. My feet felt like they were made of lead as I walked slowly, deliberately, toward the drive-through window. My heart was a frantic drumbeat in my chest, so loud I was sure it was audible in the silent restaurant. I was terrified of what I might see, but even more terrified of the unknown. I reached the window and hesitated, my hand hovering over the cold metal frame. I took a deep, shaky breath and forced myself to look outside. This time, the lane wasn't empty. There was a car there, a dark, nondescript sedan, its engine humming silently. It hadn't been there a moment ago. My eyes scanned the interior, trying to see the driver, and what I saw made me physically stumble backward, a gasp escaping my lips. It was me. Sitting behind the wheel was a perfect reflection of myself. She was wearing the same faded college hoodie I had on, the same silver hoop earrings. She had my tired eyes, my messy bun. It was an impossible, terrifying mirror image. She, the other me, just stared back at me from the driver's seat. Her expression was completely blank at first, a hollow, empty mask. It was like looking at a doll that had been made to look like me. Then, her lips curled into a smile. It was the most horrifying smile I have ever witnessed. It was cold, empty, and utterly devoid of warmth or humanity. It didn't reach her eyes, which remained like dark, vacant pools. As she held my gaze, her voice came through the speaker again, not in my headset this time, but from the restaurant's external speaker, a low and chilling statement that wasn't an order. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. And then, in the blink of an eye, the car was gone. It didn't drive away. It didn't speed off into the night. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a solid, real object in the drive-through lane, and the next, there was nothing but empty pavement under the dim yellow lights. The order vanished from the screen, the timer stopped. It was as if the entire encounter had been wiped from reality. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just stood there, shaking and crying, my mind struggling to comprehend the impossible thing I had just witnessed. I called my manager, my voice a choked whisper, and told him I had to go home. He didn't ask any questions, he just told me to clock out. I never worked another night shift again. Even now, years later, I still hear my own voice in my dreams. Number 7. No pickles. I don't know what version of me was in that car, but a part of me is certain she's still out there, waiting in the dark. When I was 19, I took a job at a McDonald's not too far from the apartment I shared with a couple of roommates. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was decent, and the hours fit my chaotic schedule. The building itself felt ancient. It was the kind of place where the floor tiles seemed to hold a permanent layer of grime, no matter how many times you mopped them. Most of my shifts were at night, usually with just one other crew member and our shift manager, a weary, middle-aged guy named Derek. On my very first day, Derek walked me through the standard tour, the walk-in freezer, the sizzling grills, the complex security system. But just before we reached the small windowless room where the camera monitors were kept, he stopped me. He turned, his expression suddenly serious, and said something I will never, ever forget. "Listen," he said, his voice low and firm, making direct eye contact. "If you're ever here closing by yourself, I need you to promise me something." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the quiet hallway. "Don't watch the security footage from between 2 and 3 a.m. Just don't." I let out a nervous laugh, assuming it was some kind of rookie hazing, a joke to spook the new guy. But his face remained completely straight, his eyes dead serious. "I mean it," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's not worth it." My curiosity immediately flared. I asked him why, what was on the tapes, but he just gave a slow shake of his head, turned, and walked off toward the office, leaving the question hanging in the air like a thick fog. Of course, telling a 19-year-old not to do something is the surest way to make them want to do it. The mystery of the forbidden hour began to eat at me. What could possibly be on that footage that was so bad? A botched robbery? An employee stealing from the register? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more dramatic than the last. But I was smart enough to wait. I needed to earn Derek's trust, to become a familiar face on the night shift. I wanted to make sure that when I finally decided to look, I could do it without anyone watching over my shoulder, without having to explain my curiosity. I played the part of the good employee, learning the ropes and never mentioning his strange warning again. So I waited a few weeks, biding my time, until the perfect opportunity presented itself. It was a Tuesday night, notoriously slow, and my coworker had called in sick. Derek left me to close up the store by myself. The moment the locks clicked into place and the last of the lights were turned off in the dining area, a thrill of nervous energy shot through me. This was it. I made my way to the back office, the silence of the empty building amplifying the sound of my own footsteps. I sat down in the worn-out office chair, the screen of the security monitor glowing in the dark room. My heart pounded in my chest as I used the mouse to scrub back through the night's recorded footage. 1:58, 1:59. Nothing but an empty, silent lobby. Then the clock ticked over. The timestamp on the corner of the screen advanced slowly, 2:09, 2:10. The lobby remained perfectly still, a silent tableau of cheap tables and plastic chairs under the dim security lighting. I started to feel, a bit foolish, honestly, wondering if Derek's warning had been an elaborate prank after all. Then, at exactly 2:11 a.m., it happened. A figure just walked into the frame from the main entrance. He was a man, dressed in a plain gray hoodie and dark jeans. My first thought was that it was a customer. Maybe the timestamp on the camera was wrong and someone had come in just before I locked up. But then a chilling realization washed over me. I watched the footage again. The front doors never opened. They stayed shut and completely motionless. He had walked right through them. My breath caught in my throat. I was the only person in the building. I knew that for a fact. Yet here was a man on my screen, standing in the middle of my lobby. He didn't move like a normal person. His steps were unnaturally slow, measured, and eerily silent. There was this, gliding quality to his motion, like his feet weren't quite connecting with the floor. He walked to the exact center of the dining area, then stopped and turned to face the front counter, where I would have been standing if a customer had come in. And there he stood, completely motionless, a silent sentinel in the empty restaurant. He wasn't looking around or checking his phone. He was just watching the counter, waiting. I ripped my eyes away from the monitor and, peered through the small window from the office into the lobby itself. It was empty. The tables were bare, the chairs were neatly stacked, exactly as I had left them. There was no man in a gray hoodie. There was nothing but shadows and silence. My heart hammered against my rib cage. I was seeing two different realities at once, the empty room before my eyes and the occupied one on the screen. I forced myself to look back at the monitor, my hand trembling as I used the mouse to scrub the footage forward. He stayed in that same spot, a ghostly statue, for what felt like an eternity. He didn't shift his weight. He didn't move a muscle. The timestamp continued its crawl, 2:30, 2:35, 2:40. At exactly 2:41 a.m. he finally moved. He turned, not toward the door he'd entered through, but directly toward the security camera that was recording him. He took one slow step, then another. His face was obscured by the hood and the poor quality of the video, just a blur of pixelated features. As he took a third step, he simply vanished. He didn't walk out of the frame or duck out of view. In the middle of his stride, he was there one moment and gone the next. The lobby on the screen was empty once again. The recording continued, showing nothing but the silent, still room for the rest of the hour. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone. I had to call Derek. I didn't care what time it was or if I was breaking some unspoken rule. I had to know what I had just seen. I described everything in a frantic, stumbling rush, the man appearing at 2:11, walking through the doors, standing motionless in the lobby, and then vanishing into thin air. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't the silence of confusion or disbelief. It was the silence of resignation. Finally, I heard him let out a deep, tired sigh. "I told you not to look, kid," he said, his voice laced with a profound weariness. And that's when he finally told me the truth. He told me that about 10 years ago, long before I started working there, a man had come into the McDonald's late one night. He went into the men's bathroom and never came out. The employee on the overnight shift was alone and swamped with cleaning duties and never noticed. The man's body wasn't discovered until the next morning when the opening manager arrived. He was found slumped over in the third stall, his phone still clutched in his hand, fallen just out of his reach. The screen was still lit up, showing that he had been in the middle of trying to call for help when he died from an overdose. He had died alone, just a few feet away from a potential rescuer who never knew he was there. Ever since that night, strange things had been happening in the restaurant, but only between the hours of 2 and 3 a.m. The time of his death, orders for food that no one placed would suddenly appear on the kitchen monitor. Full trash cans would get tipped over inside rooms that were locked from the outside, and on the security camera footage the man would appear. Always at 2:11 a.m., the time he was estimated to have entered the restaurant. He would show up in the lobby, a silent, repeating echo of his last moments. Sometimes he was standing, like I saw. Other times, he was sitting at a table. But he always, without fail, vanished before the hour was up. I asked Derek why nobody had done anything about it, why they kept the place open. He told me they had tried everything. They had the entire camera system ripped out and replaced with a new one. They brought in priests to bless the building. They even shut the entire restaurant down for a week for a deep cleaning, hoping that breaking the routine would make him move on. But nothing ever worked. The moment they reopened, he was back. "He's not an angry spirit," Derek said quietly, his voice full of a strange, sad empathy. "He's not trying to hurt anyone. He's just stuck." That single thought haunted me more than any jump scare or violent ghost story ever could. The idea of being eternally stuck, forever replaying the moments before your lonely death, just watching a place you died in, over and over and over again, forever. What is it about the night shift that seems to invite the supernatural? These stories, born from the humming silence of a late-night McDonald's, tap into a primal fear of isolation. They remind us that familiar places can become alien and menacing when stripped of their daytime context. A restaurant built for noise and crowds becomes an echoing tomb when empty. The cheerful branding, designed to be welcoming, feels like a mocking grin in the dim, sterile light. It is in this profound quiet, this deep loneliness, that the mind becomes a fertile ground for terror. Every unexplained noise, every flicker of a light, every shadow in the corner of your eye is amplified, taking on a sinister weight it wouldn't have in the bright light of day. It is the perfect stage for a haunting. The tales of the man in the red windbreaker, the drive-through doppelganger, and the figures stuck in a time loop all share a common thread: the blurring of reality. Is it a ghost, a glitch in the system, or a mind worn down by exhaustion and solitude? The security cameras that should provide objective truth instead offer corrupted files and impossible images. The headset that connects you to the outside world instead brings you voices from nowhere, or worse, your own. These experiences attack the very senses we rely on to understand our world, leaving the witnesses stranded in a fog of uncertainty. They are left questioning not just what they saw, but their own sanity. Urban legends often serve as cautionary tales, modern folklore that speaks to our collective anxieties. The stories from the graveyard shift at McDonald's are no different. They are about more than just ghosts. They are about the vulnerability we feel when we are alone in the dark. They explore the fear of being watched by unseen eyes, the terror of confronting a version of yourself that is not you, and the profound sadness of a soul who is lost and forgotten. These narratives transform a global symbol of convenience and comfort into a place of profound dread, a liminal space where the ordinary rules no longer apply and anything can happen. Perhaps these events are nothing more than tricks of the light or products of a sleep-deprived imagination. Maybe there is a logical explanation for every glitching camera and disembodied voice. But for the people who lived through these nights, the experience was undeniably real. The terror was real. The cold sweat and the pounding heart were real. The truth behind these urban legends may not be about proving the existence of ghosts, but about acknowledging that some places, at certain hours, hold an energy that defies easy explanation. They hold an echo of something that was, or something that should not be. The golden arches are a beacon, a promise of something familiar and safe, no matter where you are in the world. They represent consistency, a predictable experience you can count on, but these stories suggest something else is lurking just beyond that comforting glow. They tell us that behind the clean counters and standardized menus, there can be a darkness that management can't scrub away, and no amount of corporate training can prepare you for. It's the kind of fear that lingers, that follows you home after you clock out, that changes the way you see a place you thought you knew so well. It's a reminder that even the most mundane locations can have a history, a memory that is anything but ordinary. Why do these stories resonate so deeply with us? It's because they take the mundane and twist it into the monstrous. We have all been to a McDonald's. We have all sat in those booths and stood at that counter. The familiarity is what makes the horror so effective. If a place as common and brightly lit as a fast food restaurant can become a gateway for the inexplicable and the terrifying, then where is truly safe? It suggests that the veil between our world and another is not confined to ancient castles or fog-shrouded graveyards. It can be as thin as the glass of a drive-through window on a lonely Tuesday night. The employees in these stories are left with unresolved terror. The man in the red windbreaker is still missing, his ghostly image perhaps still appearing at 2:14 a.m. for some new unsuspecting employee. The doppelganger in the car is still out there, waiting for her order. The man who never left is still pacing the lobby, stuck in his final moments for eternity. There is no neat resolution, no ghost busted, no mystery solved. There is only the lingering question, the chilling uncertainty that these phenomena are ongoing, a permanent feature of the locations themselves. The horror doesn't end when the story does. It simply waits for the next person to work the night shift. So, the next time you find yourself on a dark highway, the only light for miles coming from those familiar golden arches, you might pause for a moment. You might think about the person on the other side of that speaker, alone in the quiet building. You might wonder what they see when they look out into the darkness, or what they hear when the restaurant is silent. You might ask yourself what truly happens after midnight, when the world is asleep and the only things awake are the lonely and the lost. Because after hearing these stories, you can never be entirely sure what's real and what's just waiting for you at the window.